Sometimes you gotta eat cheap, so just chicken and broccoli. As
Well,
cheap as it gets, really.
all right. We are live. Welcome to the Fray first event of a Fray community event of 2025. We are here with Veni or Vasili Rodriguez, who is our lighting and environmental artist, here to show you some behind the scenes elements that you all enjoyed in the 0.15 update. We were very happy to see the incredible amount of enthusiasm that you all had for that rework, especially with the garage area. So, what are we looking at? What are we going to be seeing tonight?
Excuse me. So currently we're looking at a loading screen because we're loading up the map. I think the stream is paused. But essentially, kind of like the rundown, the TLDR of what we'll be doing this evening is we'll kind of be going in and kind of going behind the scenes and showing like how like the lighting and the kind of set dressing was done, and kind of get questions for people who have who aren't really, I guess, well knowledged on like the kind of like game dev aspect of it, and just kind of see what kind of stuff goes into like faking things, lighting, like hallways that don't go anywhere, etc., etc.
You showed us a lot of really cool stuff, and you can always watch the VOD on our YouTube channel. Um, So I know you did the title screen. I guess what interesting challenges did you have in the 0.15 update in terms of tackling the engaging parking lot area and some of the new areas that were added?
Well, I'd say, admittedly, I mean, it was the first time. I mean, technically, it'd be the second time I'd officially be doing level art for 5K as a whole. Again, for people who don't know, I actually don't come from an environment lighting artist background. It's just something that I kind of picked up. So when it came to 0.15, the garage, it was a huge tackle to get a lot of the set dressing, the top level of the garage, and then the bottom level done in a very short amount of time. And working with level design and the blockouts, which came in handy. So, and when this map is finished loading, because it's a huge map, you'll kind of get to see like kind of like the neat little tricks and like the behind the scenes aspects of the world and how we load things, how we fake things, how we made things look pretty with reflections and speculars and all that nitty gritty stuff that most people probably don't really care for. But it should be interesting. It should be almost done loading now. It's a pretty huge map.
Yes, it is a very big map that is always constantly having stuff added. But that is really exciting to hear about your kind of evolving. I guess, is there anything you'd like to tell about how you sort of evolved your skill set? Because it's very particular and it's not the easiest thing to learn. Was it all just sort of learning? Was it all just sort of like trial and error, or were there tutorials you looked up, or what was your sort of method of building the skill set in terms of doing environmental art?
I Okay. I might start. It's chewing through my CPU right now. But no. To answer your question, I'd say more just have an eye for it. It's one of those things like creativity. Just kind of like you can't just like learn creativity. You can get inspiration for creativity. Have an eye for it, like where to place a box, and again, like it's much. I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit, like placing a box in an editor. Uh, Seems to like a lot of people like very very simple, but in regards to like lighting and stuff like that, it's definitely, again, like there's so many good games that have good lighting, and just taking inspiration from those games. So I'd probably say it just kind of something that kind of came naturally. I would say. Am I still here?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Because I see you're loading up the persistent world, which is taking a little while. But
Yeah, it should be. It should. It's yeah. It should be almost done.
what is
So
that other
just a little bit more chatter.
editor while we're waiting that you like switching between?
Which one?
The you seem to be going toggling between two screens. There's the loading Area 12 persistent world, and then there's the one with the testing area.
Yeah, so it's just the maps. It's all of our maps in the game currently.
I see. So it's
But
just
Area 12, so for those of you, okay, so just to kind of explain why this map is taking so long to load, it's because, and this has been a criticism previously, way back during our Kickstarter, is that the whole Area 12 is loaded in one map. It's broken into things called persistent levels, and persistent levels are like cookie cutter, like individual levels that you can stitch together to make one giant one. And what we're loading right now is we're loading, call it like the master level. So this holds every single building, every single room in the whole game, which is like, I believe last time I checked, 40,000 objects, items, props. I'm not even going to mention code and dialogue and NPCs. So in hindsight, I probably should have loaded this earlier. But my PC's starting to get hot, so that means it should be almost done.
yeah, I hope it doesn't burn down your computer. I hear that you have a very special beast of a machine because you also do a lot of like 4K gameplay capture.
I do.
Tell us
Okay, so
for all the gearheads, what
Go-
what are the specs on your
Gooms is asking for a ban right now. No, Cal's right. I actually bought this computer specifically to run SCPSL. It is a very asking, it's a very demanding game. So the 4090 and the, I believe, now I know I'm going to get made fun of this. It is an Intel, but the reason I got Intel is because this specific CPU is very good for Premiere Pro and Photoshop.
Oh, because you also, I guess, you do a lot of video editing and video capture. Um, do you find that your computer's like works a little bit better than that than you know, kind of like the more hard running Unreal engine?
Uh, I mean, again, like it's one of those things where like even like a beast of a computer still can't manage to open up Area 12 without crashing or causing issues. I'll tell you what I do. If it doesn't start showing the level in like 30 to 60 seconds, I'll just start showing previews of what the map will look like so that we're not just looking at a loading screen. I think that'd be preferable before we start dropping off, you know. I didn't really think it'd take this long. I mean, I've loaded this map before multiple times, so it's a
Ah,
little concerning.
is it just because I hope you doesn't like completely crash your computer to open it up?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't crash. It's just it requires a lot of. It's based primarily on the CPU, so it's loading all of the assets. It's loading all the code, all the triggers, everything. But essentially, well, it's just so that we can get a visual of what we'll be going through. I'll actually pull it up right now so that we're not just looking at a black screen.
So what are we seeing here as we're waiting for the other thing to load? Is there anything in this testing map you can show off?
No. I mean, I think mostly everyone here has seen the testing level. But more so the fact that how like the editor is kind of loading that stuff. But here, let me switch my monitor actually.
So I guess in terms of like the technical know-how. There we go. This is a cool thing to show off. I know you take a lot of very cinematic photos on your ArtStation. Um, tell us about what you do to kind of like get or build these environments.
So going back to what I said earlier, specifically for the 0.15 update, it was a relatively quick turnaround time. The fun fact, so the parking garage section, so the whole destroyed is loading. So the whole kind of destroyed garage car alarm kind of section for the end of chapter one actually was kind of like, I wouldn't say a last minute thing, but last minute in the scheme of, I'd say like a month of work. It was kind of like, how can we make this chapter end off on a bang? And this was kind of that. So we have two levels of the parking garage. This is level two. We're going to go to level one. We have level one, and this is sort of a quick turnaround time with 2 weeks of set dressing. So kind of imagine it in a complete blackout state. There was no assets. There were cars, but like the materials and the textures weren't there. They were on par with quality. There weren't any lights, fixtures above. There wasn't any color correction, anything that really kind of makes it stand out from Area 12.
So what sort of vibes were you kind of like using for kind of like cinematic inspiration for this parking garage? Were there like movies, reference material, in terms of like making sure the cars felt like that they were suitably displaced and within the parking garage?
Yeah, so for the inspiration, there wasn't I wasn't told to take any specific inspiration, but I from the inspiration of reference images I took specifically of car bombings. Unfortunately, like using real world photos and videos, especially one from actually it was the World Trade Center bombing. I think it was in like the 90s. But lots of like very very creepy and eerie references of like the rebar bending, or like the ceiling collapsing, cars going inward, tons of pretty horrifying stuff. And then that on par with like the whole like resonators and like the zombies jumping in, and I think that really kind of tied things together, especially with like the smoke aspect of it. Like you're just kind of covered in smoke, which definitely made fighting the resonators a lot more difficult.
And I guess what is it like to find the balance between the artistry and fundamental design, where you want players to have an atmospheric time, but you don't necessarily want them to feel encumbered by too much fire or particle effects, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's definitely like there's an environment pass, and of course, working with the technical aspect of it, making sure that it all performs well. Because originally in its design, the actual parking garage was in this screenshot. It was toned down a lot. In the original adaptation of the parking garage, it was completely covered in smoke. Because in real life, in like a setting like this after an explosion, there's really, except maybe some ventilation, there's technically nowhere for the smoke to go. So you just have a giant room of just complete smoke, and you can't see anything. But unfortunately, that doesn't make for interesting gameplay. That makes it very difficult and very annoying. And we would get some pretty negative reviews on Steam if we did that. So we kind of compromised. We made it foggy. We added in our own particle effects. The fire like ties it together, and it's not something that, unless you're really nitpicky about it, that you won't really mind it. Oh,
Ah,
oh, finally.
yeah. Now we're ready. Now we're cooking with Crisco. Behold the incredibly cinematic entire map of Area 12. I can see that we are in the much beloved chicken section. So take us through. Tell us. There is a lot of environmental storytelling with these horrifying eggs and bio flesh mass. Um, Fill us in.
Yeah, one moment. It's just compiling shaders. So yeah, I guess since it spawned us here, I guess we'll just go ahead and start with the chicken section. So originally, the chicken section was a lot more well lit, but the game director decided that having things more pitch dark and with more stylistic lighting, and by stylistic I mean more like directional lighting, and that's something we'll actually talk about a little when we get more to the garage. Hopefully, when my screen unfreezes after that whole loading section. Um, but I guess while we're here, I guess we'll talk about specifically directional lighting and then fill lighting. So directional lighting, obviously, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like very like spotlights, like stuff pointing, lights telling you where to go, and sometimes being obvious about it, sometimes being subtle. Like if there's a hanging workstation light pointed towards somewhere, or if there's a ceiling light, or there's a flashlight pointing towards a door, or a flashlight pointing towards an enemy. So, like that's more directional lighting that you want the player to focus on. And those lights, those lights are usually movable or dynamic, I should say. This is something that I think mostly everyone knows about. That there's baked lighting and then there's dynamic lighting. Dynamic is obviously not baked. It is you get high quality shadows. You don't have to bake light maps into the worlds, which takes time. You have to bake it into the level. So, for example, we can actually come here, and there's actually a mist ground fog here. But if you notice that this light is casting, you can see the volumetrics kind of shooting out from the work light here, and this is more like the kind of like directional lighting I was talking about. Like we're trying to guide the player. Wow, that lag spike. We're trying to guide the player this way. So even though we want things like ultimately it's all about a balance of making things look cool while also, trying to guide the player to a certain location or trying to make them feel a certain emotion. And I actually pulled this off. It's actually a blueprint, so we can actually move this around. Pretty cool. It's completely dynamic, so this wouldn't bake. And just to kind of go back to that real quick, static lighting is more faster than dynamic lighting. Dynamic costs more to run, so that's why a lot of times in our games, and especially in like a lot of other games, actually Ready or Not is a prime example of this. I believe they don't use any dynamic lighting. They use entirely baked light maps, which means that you wouldn't get stuff like this because it's not. This is dynamic, and baked is more like it's baked into the world, so you won't get dynamic shadows from anything like that. But I actually, just to kind of quickly, and then like we'll move on. I actually got this effect by just literally sticking the light inside the in the construction kind of cylinder, so we get these like bends of metal that then emit that volumetric thing going on here. And then obviously for performance, we call that light very quickly. So when you kind of walk down the hallway, you turn the corner, that light is no longer there. It's completely despawned. So that's how we're kind of working with the programmers and the technical aspect of making things optimized while making them look good has definitely been a challenge. But every update that we do from 0.16 and onward, it's just gonna continue to look better and perform better. We can actually
that's exciting to hear. But for novices who aren't maybe so technically inclined, what is the layman's definition of baked lighting?
So baked lighting basically just means that it's essentially baked into the world. Like, so it's not it's it's baked onto a texture, right? It's not like it's not like a light entity anymore casting light. I can't show it now because of that we would have to do like an actual bake, which would take an extremely long amount of time. But for example here, if you can kind of see, so these shadows that are being cast from this light would be considered sharp. If this light was baked, like a baked light, we would be getting much softer, smudgier shadows along the edges of these props, which may not look good, but it performs a lot better because the game doesn't have to light the scene in real time because it's baked onto a texture. So these cargo containers, technically, this light, like you'd be essentially like stapling a light map texture to these containers. So it's not actually casting light anymore. And with the light being dynamic, I can also move it around and do whatever I want with it in real time. So whereas if it was baked, if I tried moving the light, then the light map would still be here casting the light, even though I moved the light. I think that's the best way I can explain it. There's definitely a lot easier, probably more simpler ways, but that's just the way I know how to kind of break it down.
Very cool. So I guess what would you like to sort of like show off before moving on to the next area? Because I do think this is a really awesome, well constructed atmosphere piece, the chicken thing. But I don't know if there's like more things that you're more excited to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of go out and explore most of the area. There's some areas that were done previously to kind of my switch over to environment art. So not everything has been done by me, but I guess we'll start making our way towards the garage. So just kind of show you guys how chaotic it is in the editor. Like there's so many things going on. There's so many. It is a little insane.
When you turn on all the icons, it kind of gives you an idea of like just how many different elements are placed in. And it's a wonderful sense of controlled chaos in terms of like it feels like you're walking through this kind of dilapidated environment, but it's always nice to see how much care goes into actually building this sort of sense of destruction.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, by the way, there's any Isaac? I suppose usually we can save them to the end, but I mean, I see Gooms is already doing it. If there's any questions, like live questions pertaining to what I'm talking about, you can just go ahead and
Okay,
interrupt me
we
and
can,
call them out.
definitely sure. So as you know from the Discord, at me if you have a question for Venny, and I will feed it. I will try and read. Gooms has been doing a fantastic job of answering individual questions, but if you have questions
Gooms has
related
not been
towards
doing a good job.
what Venny has is showing off, feel free to give it out, and we will start getting them.
So, yeah.
Of course, the earliest one, MK11, or as I like to think of him, Gooms 2, because he has the Gooms' profile pic, and he's also got the Batarang, which, always makes me do a double check. Asks, when is the release date of 0.16? I cannot tell you. I will do my usual, not as soon as sooner than you'd think, but not as soon as you'd like. They are working hard on it, but due to the respect of the team and all the hard work people like Benny, I cannot tell you.
Yeah. So we'll actually, unless there's, I mean, there's really nothing crazy going on here. It's just car headlights. There's just some decals placed, a couple of lights outside the player area, kind of giving the illusion of there's something more over there. But I guess we'll kind of go over to the kind of the interesting part of the garage.
Effect
Kind of
asks,
looking back on it though.
oops,
Oh,
yep.
go ahead.
Effect
No, no,
asks,
go.
I came in late. Could we get a quick summary of what, for those that weren't here yet, what are we talking about? We were talking about environmental lighting and art, environmental art. That is what Venny is giving us a view of the recent work he did in 0.14.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we've kind of reached the kind of beginning section of the kind of main battle of the parking. So this is where I kind of want to start delving into kind of like the behind the scenes of how like the lighting stuff actually works. So right here we can kind of notice it seems, I guess, to like the normal eye, it just kind of seems pretty straightforward. You walk around the corner, you're kind of like there's so much going on. It's like, how do we tell the player where to go, but also like how do we make things look cool? And you'd immediately assume, oh, there's a directional light shining directly onto where the players are, and then it's kind of doing two things. It's shining where the player is and where they should be, kind of like hint, oh, jump down here. And to most people, it seems like, oh, it's just one light doing that, but it's actually multiple. It's going to lag a little bit. So essentially, there's one, two, three, four. There's four floating lights here, and they're all dynamic for the sake. And I'll actually, in a few moments, I'll actually flip the light complexity cam to kind of show off how unperformant it is until lights are baked. But essentially, here, if I actually go ahead and remove a couple of these lights, then you'll kind of see like the scene will fall apart relatively quickly. Yeah, so just turning off those two lights, we immediately notice it's a lot darker and it's a lot more eerie, but it feels like a little weird. Like this light technically, if this light was placed here in real life, then technically like the luminescence value should be lighting up a lot of this area. But the problem with that is something called attenuation radius. And so when it comes to Unreal specifically, lights have something called a attenuation radius. Attenuation radius basically means how far the light goes. And you'll notice here it's currently set to 1900. But the problem is that the more you, and it kind of explains it here, the more you raise this value, so like the longer, and I think we'll actually show it here.
Oh, one quick question. This might kind of line in. Goro Gregoro asks, any specific visual inspiration for the environment, Area 12? It reminds me a bit of Alien versus Predator or Half-Life in terms of feel. I know you said for this section you kind of looked up car bombings and real-life tragedies. But I guess were there any like films that you kind of like use for inspiration here?
Um, I wouldn't know because I never worked on the game in terms of its like actual level design and its kind of look. Like I mentioned it earlier, but I kind of started doing environment art for 5K relatively recently, and like it's recently, I'd say like 6 months. So in terms of like, and I assume you mean like kind of like the general like the concrete aesthetic, like the facility as a whole. That wouldn't be my area. That'd be more of level design. But I definitely agree. It definitely gives off. Area 12 reminds me more of like Resident Evil. I would say in terms of like it's like umbrella, like in terms of like this large facility underground, deep in the mountains, that kind of thing.
Another question this is actually perfect for you. Dark Internal asks, I don't know if this is really lighting based, but I want to ask how you and a Fray team made the SCP 5K menu. It's really cool, and I want to make a similar effect. I would recommend. Venny did a really good breakdown in one of our previous videos. I will see if I can dig up the link for you. But Venny, if you want to do the kind of like, because it's really cool. You actually like the menu screen is actually running in like Unreal,
Like in real time.
Yeah,
It's running in real time.
Um,
Yeah, so actually, I can actually go over that relatively quickly after just kind of finishing up this section here. Um, but yeah, so just to kind of finish off what I was saying earlier, attenuation radius is basically how far the light casts light. So I'll just quickly show if I raise this value to 2800, you see that we get that light bouncing much farther. But the more you raise it, is the more cost, the more performance impact it has, which makes the game run worse. So ideally, with the scene, what I kind of did here was I turned the attenuation down to 1900, and then to kind of get the light to carry over, kind of like almost like add to it, I placed another light here that artificially gives the illusion that this light is going farther than it should. And we kind of do the same thing over here. If I actually turn off this light, so this is another fake light. Like this light shouldn't exist. It's very Hollywood in its approach. But if we turn off the light, we immediately notice it just really kills the scene. Like it feels very dark. And some people might find this like, oh, like it looks cooler that way. But from a game design perspective, you want to tell players where to go. It's like, oh, well, go down into the pit. Go down the ditch. And that's what these four lights are for. So when it comes to lighting stuff, especially in video game, like tactics like this have been happening for a very long time in gaming. Like thinking of like The Last of Us, and like there's tons of hidden lighting. There's like tons of like just hidden behind the scenes stuff that really like you don't really think about it, but in reality really carry the scene and makes it look a lot more realistic. It's no other way of describing it other than it's very Hollywood, like very facade. Like as soon as you kind of take the camera behind and you notice it's all fake. It's none of it. Like we're kind of scrapping together just to get a running optimized game, and that's one of the things we do. And I'll actually quickly just kind of get a visual representation of the performance cost of lights. This is what it looks like.
Oh man.
So green good, green and blue good, purple and white bad, very bad, extremely bad actually. Not just bad, that is extremely bad. So the more lights that you overlap, the more of this you get. And you can kind of see that you start to lose like that whiteness as you kind of go away. It's because we're calling the lights out. So as we get closer, then more of the lights come in. So you don't really notice it when you're in the room, but every single fire, like piece of fire, has a light attached to it. And luckily, a lot of these lights are baked, which talking about earlier, baked lighting is very good because the game doesn't have to light things dynamically or doesn't have to do it in real time. It's already been done. It's already been pre-baked. And almost every single game engine on the planet does this. I would say Valve's Source 2 engine probably does it the best out of every game engine I've seen. It looks like almost dynamic lighting, but it's entirely baked, and they need baked lighting to run games like Counter-Strike 2 and other projects that they've been working on. So that's just an example, but there's plenty other game engines that do the exact same thing. Unreal is no different.
So Wolf Gaming has a few great technical questions. How do you manage the trade-off between real-time global illumination and pre-baked lighting to achieve both dynamic responsiveness and high-quality visuals in SCP-5K? What advanced techniques do you employ to ensure accurate shadow mapping and avoid common artifacts like shadow acne or Peter Panning in the game?
Like I'd say that kind of goes back to the kind of breakdown of the scene in particular. So because obviously I think I remember Gooms was mentioning it to someone earlier. Unreal Engine 5 uses something called Lumen, which is dynamic light, or it's a global illumination done dynamically in real time. So obviously the benefit is that
if you want to use it, I think it's important to point that out. You are not forced to use Lumen because
yes,
you used UE5.
yes, it is a feature.
We should be very clear about that because there's a lot of really bad information about UE5.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. So you definitely don't have to. Baked lighting is still a feature. It's not going anywhere. Although Unreal specifically likes to or hasn't really put any focus on it, which is a huge shame. Because baked lighting can actually look really good, and it looks. I'd say it looks really good in our game.
You brought it up earlier. Ready or Not uses baked lighting, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It looked amazing before they went to UE5.
Yeah, and I mean, games. I'm really glad you brought that up. Switching to UE5 is not a game, and if anything, I actually think the majority of the gaming consensus is that Unreal Engine 5 has kind of got this negative connotation.
It's been debunked thoroughly the past couple of weeks. Yeah, it's just not true. Just a lot of the stuff people are saying about it is just not. It's just not accurate. Also, as I understand it, if you start a new project in UE5, I believe Lumen and Nanite are enabled by default. But if you upgrade to UE5, they are not. So you would have to opt into that, and you'd have to like completely remake all of your materials and the way that you do your lighting and everything like that. So a lot of the times when people run into like major optimization issues in UE5 games, it's the way it's made. Straight up, like it's skill issue, I guess. Is really what it kind of comes down to.
We're in a doggy dog world, I mean, listen. I mean, games like Ready. Like I'll bring up Ready or Not one last time.
Dude, I've been playing it on the UE5 one. My performance is great. I don't know what people are talking about.
I didn't realize it, but again, like baked lighting,
I'm all maxed out, and I'm perfectly fine for it.
People don't even realize, like, going from baked lighting to now. Again, certain people notice the difference, but baked lighting can look extremely well, and again, it performs well and it looks well because I mean, at the end of the day, that's the goal, right? Like the whole thing with Lumen is to not give developers like more like easy access to kind of creating good looking environments, but that's not to say you obviously can't do that. It's just obviously when it comes to baked lighting, you have to do more work, but the work that you put into it pays off.
Yeah.
It absolutely, again, going back to the whole like optimization thing I was telling you about, but so Epic, and sorry, I've been rambling on. I'll go back to your question, but yeah, Epic is definitely working on like improving, like, so I'll just bring this up as an example one last time. So the whole light complexity thing. So in UE4, which is currently what we're running, a custom version of Unreal Engine 4.27. This, like, if all these lights were dynamic, which they're not, this would absolutely kill the game. Like the FPS I'm getting right now is what it would be like in a package build. But with like new technologies such as things like megalights coming from Epic that's still in still in beta, but it's it's getting lots of work and it looks really super well. Like that's really cool. Like imagine being able to run a scene with all dynamic lights is a super cool thing to think about. But when it comes to 5K in particular, you talked about like how do we get like make sure that like the lighting still looks realistic while also making sure that we don't get the artifacting. It's kind of similar to what I was just showing you here. Like again, like faking it, doing it the best we can. But usually, what I do to kind of get an idea of what the scene looks like normally, I'll usually again like I'll just like if I have an idea for a scene, I guess I'll just make an example. Like obviously here in the corner, I have a light pointing towards this section. Say I want this light to be completely dynamic. I'll actually, I'll set it up as if it was going to be dynamic, and then I match that with a baked lighting scenario. So realistically, this light shining on the floor technically should have some bounces. Like it's kind of dark in this corner, so what technically should happen is we come here, we'll put a point light, and then ignore the construction light floating. Let's just ignore that. So like technically what should be happening realistically here is that the light is shining on the floor, which then and then obviously we have the fire here, which then bounces back to the corner here that's super duper dark. So you would get some kind of illuminescence here. Obviously this is not what it would look like in the bake, but this is kind of an example of trying to match what a realistic scene would look like. And I believe actually if I quickly, holy shit, this map is big. If I actually fly back to the chicken area, that light that I was showing off earlier actually fakes it. We actually have a spotlight in the blueprint, but we also have a point light to give the illusion. Yeah, right here. So you see like technically we're getting the backlighting of this light hitting the wall and going up in the ceiling. But if I actually turn off the point light, then we lose all of that. Yeah, so it's all darkness. Whereas if you go back to the fake, so that's essentially what we do. And it's not perfect, and that's not to say it will be always completely realistic half the time, but that's just it's one of those things where sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time I think it does a pretty good job at mimicking what it would be like to the best of our ability.
The comedy person asks, are you and the Afraid team going to add outside levels like the forest, like the one in the cinematic trailers? Well, technically, there are 2 outdoor levels you can play right now. There is the raid on Outpost Axiom, and there is also the Antarctic mission. And as people can tell from the teaser, the Antarctic mission is going to be greatly expanded upon in the 0.16 update. Are there any interesting details about doing lighting and environmental design for the Arctic that you'd like to tease people with? Since I know you can't go into too much detail, but I imagine that there's some interesting challenges to that kind of beloved environment.
Yeah, so when it comes to the Arctic, I think people are going to be pretty surprised at the turnaround for people who played or who have been playing the kind of current in-game look at it, or like the beta, I'll just call it the beta version of how flat the lighting was and how kind of bland it is. I think people are going to be genuinely in for a treat for kind of how we kind of overhauled the lighting. We redid a lot of the kind of optimization, so it definitely should run better. But obviously, also from a stylistic point, everything should have a lot more color. Something you'll actually notice in this scene, and we'll actually be moving scenes so it doesn't get too boring, is that this is actually pretty desaturated, and I'll actually go to our post-processing volume here and actually turn off. Yeah, so this post-processing volume I'm turning off. This is the default post-processing volume we have in every single level of the game. So Axiom, the testing map, all that is controlled by this volume here. If I turn it off, we immediately get a huge boost in like saturation and colors and contrast, and it's definitely overwhelming. So I've been trying to push for, and going back to the Arctic thing, you'll definitely be seeing a lot more color variation, a lot more purples, reds, blues, a lot less desaturated looks. There's nothing wrong with things being desaturated, but I think going forward, at least in for a 1.0 and every single update that we're going to be doing up until that point, to start experimenting and playing around with bright, colorful. Now, not like Fortnite colorful. Like I'm not talking about going full like very like arcadey like kind of color LUTs for each area, but essentially just kind of wanting to push the boundaries of like making things a little bit more less uniform, like less white lights, less like very like tame and worn lights, just kind of going out and experimenting and playing around and seeing what people like. I'd say games kind of I'd compare it to something like Control, where Control definitely is not afraid to make their lights extremely green or make their set pieces extremely colorful, albeit completely different game, a very linear single player story, but kind of like in terms of like colorful and like dynamics and shadows and stuff like that. So actually this one here is the one I added to the parking garage. It's post-processing volume parking garage, and you can kind of see here that I kind of wanted to add a little bit more contrast in the scene, and originally it was actually meant to be a little bit more green, but we decided against it last minute. It was meant to be, well, not that green, but it was supposed to have more of a greenish hue to it, kind of like a Fallout 3 kind of toxic look to it. Experiment around, but I think last minute we just ended up not doing it. We just turned it off, and we kind of got the desaturated look that we got here. So
did get a question, a few little bit more story-focused questions. Winning Abyss asks, will SCP-5K come to consoles? I'll say this much. There's nobody on the team who doesn't want it on consoles, but the game has to be finished before any work on that can be, because it's just...
It'll be explored once we hit 1.0.
Yeah, that's when that real conversation kind of begins, because... it's expensive to put everything over to a console when you're still kind of technically building new assets for the game.
It takes a lot of time.
You also have to do a tremendous amount of additional optimization work to hit their standards for console, and it doesn't really make sense to do major optimization while we're still making new things, because every time you make a new thing or you redo something, you just have to redo all that optimization work again. So you try to do what you can along the way, but the major stuff doesn't usually happen until later. And if we were going to approach something like console, we would want to make sure to do it when we know we're not introducing too much really new stuff that we're going to have to redo stuff over and over.
So I hope that kind of answers that question. But it's not because nobody wants it. Axo also asks, you've been very patient waiting for me to get this to you. Will there be friendly NPCs like a fellow scientist in the game? As you can see, we have introduced new characters like Crow. Eventually, you will get to interact with Quentin Toff, who's going to be a major character. In terms of story NPCs, I think that you'll have to get a more direct answer from Bowman the next time he comes, or Trey. I don't want to give away too much about that, but here is the awesome opening title sequence. Is there any new stuff here? But this always looks amazing to see. It's running in the real game, and it's all
That is actually really cool. I've never seen this before.
You've never seen it? Yeah, it is literally a soundstage. All right, next shot.
Yeah. No,
the camera moves over. All right.
I've never seen it in action. Yeah, that's
no. It's a. I think I did this no one told me to do this, and people were just all right, I guess we'll add it. It was because I think before originally it was actually, if I go to unlimited, I think it was actually just this room, and the camera was just pointed at the class, and it felt really weird. What the fuck is this barrel doing here? Is there just a? There's just a. Okay, there's just a random shootable bear. There's two. They're partners. Anyways.
Axo also asks, will you release a book on how SCP-5K is made like Half-Life did with Raising the Bar? I think that's been discussed because there's so much artwork, but I think it's also one of those things where it's before that conversation can begin more formally, the game's got to be finished. But it's definitely something...
Yeah, we got to finish the game. Absolutely got to finish the game. Although that would be a book, like a novel would be.
Well, I think more like an art book.
Wait, where the hell did Resonator go? Yeah, I'd probably say like maybe documentary would be more fitting. I would say, or like some kind of like video series episode thing, kind of going over the.
I think it would
The
be
behind
cool
the
to do like what they did with Half-Life 2, where you get the dev commentary.
Yeah.
You could like walk up to thing. I mean, we already have the podiums. It'd be cool if you could walk up and interact with the podium.
Welcome
and
to episode 2.
There's text, but there's also like an audio recording that plays or something. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of quickly go over this and move on. But yeah, so I remember someone asking this earlier. But yeah, it's just a sound. It's just a Hollywood set. We cut to. If I actually open up the sequencer, I can just quickly kind of go over that.
As like a dumb layman, that doesn't like take up like too much space in the game. Like to actually have like instead of just like a static screen, you have to like run environments.
Nope, it is. Well, I mean, you could do it that like, but then, I mean, like there's multiple reasons why. I would say it's better to do like have it actually be physically rendered in the game, and that's one for hardware. Like you're able to kind of get a gist, well, not only for how the game is gonna look in like playing the game, but you can also like it's a perfect benchmark for like swapping out graphic settings. Like if I were to play the game, then you could like turn off chat. So it's like you're basically getting a visual representation of what you'll be playing, and also seeing like from a like environment perspective, you get to see all the creepy enemies that you'll be going up against. Honestly, though, now that you bring it up, this should probably be updated to show newer like the chicken, like the Resonator should be replaced by 3199 or this guy. To kind of keep it modern and kind of keep it showing off all the new stuff we're doing, but I'd say so. It doesn't take up. It's actually extremely like you lose. I mean, you do get a cost, but the cost is so minimal. Like again, like if the camera's facing this way, like you're only rendering what's in front of you. Like there's nothing else. You're out in a void. So there's really, I'd say there's really. I mean, you can always. I mean, I've seen games where they just like they'll actually render out like a looping video, but that's just like that takes probably more because you're having to render out a video, have it be high quality enough to loop on like a UI screen. And then not only that, but you also get compression artifacts. It just doesn't seem worth it. Whereas in our case, it looks good. And Albie did a great job with the initial, I'm not sure what you call it, like the splash screen where your mouse is moving and you hit like press play to begin and that kind of stuff. So.
Effect has another lighting question. Apologies on another lighting question. There are never enough lighting questions. There's never enough. There's never enough. So don't apologize. Keep them coming. But with a certain SCP being able to alter lights or whatnot, is there a possibility to see a story being told with the way the lighting moves? Things like outlines and shadows and threats that are harm under certain conditions. Oh, that's interesting. So.
Yes. The Arctic actually features. Excuse me. I'm still eating. The Arctic new Arctic update 0.16 does feature a lot of lighting based horror, I guess, like horror buildups or crescendos. Things running by lights, running by windows. Definitely some things getting up behind a light, in front of a light, spooking you. Won't go too much into it, but lighting definitely plays a heavy stylistic, creative element in this new update that we'll be releasing.
So there you go. And one thing I do hope to have is like eventually have you back once 0.16 is up, and then you can kind of show off the Antarctic environment. Once people have played through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely love if people are interested enough to kind of go behind the scenes for that too. Although I would say it's a little bit less complex, mostly due to the storm elements and whatnot. But I won't go too much. I don't know if certain things haven't been confirmed or not, like haven't spoken publicly. So I don't want to get in trouble.
Exactly. Nobody wants to get in trouble. MK11 asks, my question maybe is Googleable, but why was Pandemic changed to 5K? Yeah, originally it was SCP Pandemic. That's something I should know.
That was a long time ago. That was probably before your time.
No, that was 20. That was 20. We talked about it in late 2022.
I helped with the marketing for that entire event for the rename. Yeah, that was years ago.
I'm trying to find another
older team, but yeah, I mean, 5K just was more relevant, and I also think it was SEO related because at the time, like pandemic, obviously, you get buried with COVID and all of that kind of stuff, right? So I think it was strategic on multiple fronts because it's easier to search for, and it was more relevant to the universe and the lore of the game. So that was mainly.
I actually almost made an oopsie because I'm so used to loading up the Arctic level. I actually almost clicked on it. That would have been the last time I was.
It's okay. We would have been sitting here for an hour waiting for you to.
Yeah, well, no. I load every day. I haven't loaded Area 12 in like a month. I'm just trying to choose, see if there's another map I could. I could. Oh, you know what? Okay, well, this shouldn't be as long. I'll go ahead and load up part 3, but as we finish up here. Oh shit. Yeah, part 3 is the prison. We can actually just quickly go over the prison because the prison actually does have some lighting, unique stuff.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Then we'll end the stream because I know we're getting up on the hour. So.
No, you're still young, but yeah, we don't want to keep you too long. But Lazy asks, are there any scenes that would describe being held together by duct tape in order to get the right lighting?
Duct tape. I mean.
Probably some of the old levels.
I mean, probably before my time. I know for a fact because I was. So just for some I guess context, I've been technically on the team since 2020, but I never touched lighting and environment art. So I used to watch some of the old level designers and stuff work on the game, and I saw there was some definitely questionable things they did to kind of get things working quickly and excuse my French, half-assed, but definitely stuff that's been scrapped is no longer in the game. From my time, I would probably say the garage because there's so much going on. There's so many things that we do to optimize, get rid of lighting, call objects and performance. Volumes to remove particles, stuff like that. I mean, I say the garage is the biggest. I mean, I wouldn't use the word duct tape. It still runs and everything is still solid. But in regards to delicate,
you nudge really something and it breaks 6 things.
I'd say that.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to hear that, through time, you're able to move away from, holding things together with duct tape to getting things built. I guess, would you say the Arctic has been more challenging to light than Area 12?
No, actually, quite the opposite. I mean, doing interior buildings definitely has its perks because, again, you're in a building, so all you have is wall lights and place it's very controlled, whereas outdoors can actually be a lot more interesting because, again, you have sometimes you have a moon, you have a sunlight, and the Arctic. I think people here will play the update and they'll see kind of all the cool stuff we did with the sun setting and the horror aspect as you approach the facility and you get that something's not right here. It's definitely been turned up. It's not going to be crazy oh my god, it's night and day difference, but we've definitely turned up. We've sat down and we've looked at okay, how do we make this feel different from Area 12, because obviously this is not Area 12, but we want this to feel distinct enough, it's its own location, it has nothing to do with Area 12, and that's kind of the goal. Every map that isn't set within Area 12 should have its own identity, its own style, obviously keeping consistent themes, the Omnicide and of SCPs as a whole. But in regards to LUTs, like a color grading, lighting, environment design, and making it feel unique. Because again, like if everything is the same, like if every time you load a map, it's just Area 12, like a bathroom in Area 12, then like what's the point of playing? And this goes for PvP, wave survival, like even like the main campaign. And that's why I think we're still wanting to do like DLC after 1.0. There's absolutely nothing concrete, but that's like on the topic.
There will be DLC. Omni is promised DLC. So.
Yeah, no. I'm more so speaking of like exact location wise. Like we haven't. There's nothing.
That's still to be determined. Yeah.
MK11 suggested, I think it may be just me, but in the intro of the scene with SCP to make the guards' heads, he was suggesting that he'd like it to be the guards' heads to be non-existent. I don't know if that would make it better, but that is his suggestion.
Also, yeah. So I didn't even realize like the level was loaded. Yeah. So for those of you who have played this level, yes, the elevator actually is completely modeled. It's not just like it teleports you somewhere, which is pretty common. You actually do go down all that leveling, and then you come down to the main prison area. Looking back on it, I think I overdid the green and the fog. It feels like there's a fire somewhere. It feels like we're in the garage again. There's way too much fog. Might need to go back and change this. Oh, hey fella. So yeah, I think we said we kind of go over some lighting stuff. It's a shame. So this room was never finished. This is, I mean, technically it's enterable if you break it down, but this is kind of what I was talking about in regards to
oh snap! New
doing
detail,
very distinct lighting,
never before seen environment. So tell us of this wonderful area. What secrets that have not been revealed to the player base? What are we seeing behind the veil of the curtain?
And to be clear, so the prison section of this game, so this is chapter 3. This is the very, and this goes for, I did do work on the top portion, the dorms, but all of the first time I ever touched the SCP-5K editor, environment-wise, lighting-wise, was in this section of the game. This was the first time I got a chance to kind of open my wings, or I forget what the expression is, just kind of play around and experiment with the assets that we had on hand. So doing stuff like this, and then obviously I was showing off this room earlier. This is technically enterable. It's just I don't think no one, or maybe people have. I completely forget. I haven't seen any more playtest. The Holy Bible. It's nice. And then we'll kind of go over to the prison section. And here we have a lot going, like here, tons of directional lighting. This is where, like lore-wise, I believe this is where the prisoners were marched. They have arrows. They're marched from the elevators from their cells. So tons of like, go here, do this, like very confusing flashing lights, which would be pretty overwhelming for a prisoner. Actually, if we show the lighting complexity, we see how bad it is. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. So luckily going, like I said, a lot of these these lights, there's a lot of these lights used. Not a lot of these lights are baked. So while they look dynamic, and you can tell that they're dynamic because they get that really sharp edge to them. If I actually go here really just very fast, baked lighting essentially looks like this. Like the best way I can kind of showcase it, baked lighting kind of looks like this. It's very smudgy. It's not as detailed, but it's a lot more performant. And this is dynamic. That's the best kind of before and after. So got dynamic and then baked. Baked kind of gives you that soft look. And sometimes it looks really good. Like sometimes I really prefer that soft edge. And sometimes it's even more accurate than sharp shadows. Because in real life, like these shadows shouldn't be that sharp. They should be a lot more blurry and smudgier. So we come here, we got lights. Try not to sneeze. Goodness. And then we have the main prison section, which, holy moly, there's so much going on here. Lighting-wise. Lighting fixtures on every single post. I believe all these are completely static, except these ones. The lights hanging from the top of the ceiling are stationary. Stationary basically means that it's still static, like it's not a movable light, but you can basically you get a best of both worlds where you get kind of good looking shadows, but it's also stationary. It can't be moved. Whereas movable, again, to reiterate, is completely movable. You get the sharpest shadows, the highest quality, but it costs the most.
But it's kind of amazing to see the entire like prison area cylinder with the from the outside down and how complex it is. Axo was asking, how do you come up with levels / layouts and locations with Area 12? Or I guess how would you say you work with the level designers to kind of like build environmental art as well as lighting from their more blocky 3D stuff?
Well, I mean, besides giving me like a brief rundown of what the area is and what it should look like, I'm basically given free creative range to kind of do what as long as I'm sticking to the guidelines of the area and making sure that it's performing enough. I'm basically in mostly all the areas I've worked on in SCP-5K, I'm basically given free range to kind of explore and set dress it for how I see fit, and then of course it gets approved or it gets like feedback, and then we go from there, which is definitely a very I'd say it's a luxury. Not to say that not all game. I mean, this is the only game company I've worked for, but I imagine for AAA or perhaps maybe for other companies that are a little bit more strict, sometimes you have to follow a very strict guideline of it needs to look exactly like this, which is not a bad thing. If a director has a goal or if he has a vision in mind for how the area should look, then that's great, and definitely that's what you should do. But in this case, working with Trey Bishop, who's the game director, we kind of see eye to eye on mostly everything. Like we kind of have like we're on the same wavelength. So when it came to like the prison in general, like I think in the concept art, like the lighting was pretty like there wasn't a lot of lights. It was meant to be pretty dark, like kind of use your flashlights and use your night vision. So if you turn off these lights, we can kind of see what originally it was going to look like. If we turn off these main lights here, then we get something like this, and this could be a little bit more creepier, like there's so much more, but the whole point of those lights actually hanging from the ceiling was so that we could we being like the player could kind of get a depth or get an idea of wow, like this place is massive and huge, and kind of get like a scale of where they are. And so that's another thing too I probably should have mentioned earlier, is that lighting, while obviously the whole goal is to make it look nice and make it look cool, it also has to have a purpose. It can't just exist for the purpose of looking good. It can do both those things at once, but it can't just be one or the other. So like I mentioned earlier, these lights hanging from the ceiling were to not only look good, but to get a sense of scale for how big the prison is, and definitely looking down like, whoa, it's massive. And the same thing goes for these lights. There's also lights under, I think there's something wrong with them. Yes, some are broken, but some of the catwalks have lights. I'm trying to get a better view. Yeah, so you get stuff like this that's super like stylized. It looks cool, but it also illuminates the path you're walking. So it definitely adds to that overall. I would say probably for a prison, a little bit over budget in the lighting department. But overall, I think it kind of adds to the gritty horror vibe concept that we were going for.
Effect has a question. Is the addition of lighting gloom having a large effect on the horror factor? I think maybe lighting bloom. I don't know if lighting gloom is the right.
I think he's talking about bloom. So yeah, we do use a lot of bloom. Bloom just kind of gives you that, like, if I turn off, here. So I'll actually do the same thing here I did in Garage. If I turn off a post-processing filter, you can kind of see 5K by default is pretty flat. And I'd kind of actually like to hear a little bit of thoughts from everyone here, whether or not they prefer the game in this kind of more saturated contrasty state, or in the state that it is in the main game, which is currently here. So we have off, we have on, off, on. And to go back to the original Bloom question, Bloom really just kind of gives you like that, like like euphoria dreamlike filter. Like it kind of like it softens things up. We actually use a custom. I believe Alberni made it. It's a custom bloom scale filter of some sort. So if you notice when we actually, if I increase the, actually,
Remy the Protogen says, "Holy crap! Please give us an option to toggle the bloom. It looks so good." So I guess that's one response.
Yeah, I think we'll try and get Kyle to add in a toggle for it. But yeah, so if you notice here, if we come up to the lights with bloom kind of maxed on a little bit, we kind of have this halo effect, like this kind of lens distortion bloom, and it's super cool. I'm really happy he made it. You can kind of see it. It's a little bit hard to see in some areas, but it's a really nice shader, and I believe you have to compile it through source code. It's not like an add-on or a blueprint or something. But
Braddy Survivus asks, have there been any issues with lighting when you and the team had found amusing or an issue? Are there any happy accidents, kind of like made something funny?
Happy accidents. Not in memory. I mean, everything kind of like how I talked about, everything was kind of like planned accordingly, except like, oh, like this light looks cool. Because like these lights on the ceiling, I don't think were actually meant to be, but I kind of added them in there as like, oh, like, you know, that'd be cool. And then it just kind of like everyone kind of, you know, naturally agreed. But happy accidents, other than that, I can't really think of something that was like, wow, like that was a really good idea, like, or it didn't mean for that to be so good. But I'm hoping we have something like that in the future, because I definitely know that feeling of, wow, I didn't mean to do that, but it turned out so well. And I imagine many people here have that same, like, know what that feeling feels like as well. So here's hoping.
Goro Gregoro asks, any unintuitive lessons that you've learned on what not to do with the environment lighting?
What not to do is, okay, yeah. So what not to do is overcomplicate a scene. Pretending for a moment that this entire map is in complete darkness. Like, let's say I got brought in late, and all right, you have to light this entire place in a week from scratch. The environment is already set up, everything. One of the things is, I mean, first, if there's usually a guideline, like following, definitely setting up your lights that have a gameplay purpose first, because ultimately, like, that's what's important, right? A game can look good, but if it doesn't play good, then what's the point? And that's something I've definitely learned, like, coming to, like, so working with Afray, is that, like, being able to kind of do it, like, creatively kind of put in my own 2 cents when it came to, oh, like, you know, this is a good idea, or, like, you know, it should be like this, like having more input into what and how things are is definitely a cool thing. But I would say, yeah, definitely starting, like, learning from errors and stuff like that is definitely focusing on the, like, core gameplay element lighting first. Like, if there's, like, for example, like, if there's ammo here, like, we want light. We don't want the player to pass it, and then from the complaint later, like, oh, there is no ammo. I had no idea. And it's our job as the game developers to make it obvious, not necessarily always make it obvious, but to guide the player and kind of make the decision, like, kind of make it feel like that they kind of came to the right conclusion themselves. And that can definitely be helped with lighting and not yellow paint. There will never be yellow paint ever in the game, except the yellow catwalks, which are in OSHA compliant, are OSHA compliant yellow catwalks. But
I guess you don't like Ubisoft design, where you got the yellow paint showing.
Well, it's not even Ubisoft supply. I mean, it's kind of spread through all the gaming, and it's I mean, it's funny. It doesn't. I mean, I personally don't have a problem with yellow paint, but I've seen the outrage on gaming, like on Reddit and other platforms of the hate of yellow paint. So there'll never be yellow paint. But if we were Ubisoft, there would definitely be yellow paint on this box that has a handprint of some sort. But yeah, no. Anyways, yeah. So kind of go back to the question. Yeah, definitely lighting, focusing on the game elements of the map should definitely take a priority, and then after that, you kind of like add in like that pretty lighting, like the catwalks here, like the lighting grates under these lights in the elevator, like just to kind of make it look pretty, is what I would say.
Sylvie asks, how does the night vision work and how does it interact with lighting systems? Noob questions, but intrigues me. Looks like phosphorus style night vision and not IR.
So that would definitely be a Alberni question. Alberni creates so that's a shader.
All night vision is phosphorus based. But it doesn't work that way. I think it's just a simple screen effect.
Yeah, no, it's just a
but
shader.
all night vision tubes have phosphorus in them, and they are able to see infrared light. It's not like they work.
Holy shit!
They're not like made of infrared. That doesn't make sense.
Whenever I think of night vision, I think of the classic splinters.
It's the same thing. That would still be phosphorus based.
How badass that headset thing is. It's such a shame that that poor guy Sam Fisher just kind of like got forgotten. Wolf Gaming says, how do you utilize sound design in conjunction with lighting to create a more immersive and cohesive sensory experience in SCP-5K? So I know you do some music. You were a man of many talents.
Yeah, I suppose I could kind of. I mean, I do less. I guess sound equates to like music, audio, and stuff like that. I guess I can equating with lighting. Definitely, lighting definitely helps set the mood for how the scene should play. And there's so many there's so many good ArtStation examples of a good lighting artist taking a scene and relighting it like 10 different times, because a scene could have so many different ways of lighting it that convey different emotions. Is it peachy? Is this before something happened? Is this after something happened? Are we trying to convey a more horror tone? And that's kind of why like the prison kind of has a lot of these more bluish, greenish, whitish colors, because we're trying to give kind of an expectation for how this area was before and how it is now, like kind of like how gritty it is, how dirty, how the stuff is peeling from the walls. So color definitely ties into, and like when it comes to audio stuff, like how we introduce a scene. And I would play it for you now, but I think it's a little bit broken. But like coming from wherever the player actually comes from, that we get the large reveal of the prison in its whole entirety. Kind of getting like this whole wow, like this place is huge, but it's in disarray. And that's kind of what those, going back to like the lighting here, the lighting helps the audio get a sense of scale, or how large a place is, or for like how are there enemies nearby? Should they be worried? Should you be scared? Should you like get ready for what's coming? That kind of thing, I would say.
Axo asks, would the Foundation order high lumen lights off of Temu? I would like to think that like the Foundation is like unlimited resources. They'd either get it from Amazon, or they would just have it constructed and built by like a black site manufacturer. But we'll have to ask Bowman for that kind of lore next time we can get him here.
I never really liked that excuse. I just kind of imagined like, and I guess that could mean the same thing. I just imagined like they just print money constantly. They just have a money printer in the back of the office. They just constantly print out money.
Well, you could almost
to buy and afford all their.
Well, you could almost. You ever watch the original Transformers with the Michael Bay Transformers, where we learned that like all of our technologies were reverse engineered from like Megatron. Maybe it's like that like all the technology is just stuff that the Foundation has been able to reverse engineer from SCPs, and everything from the microprocessor to the CD to the internet is all just technology that was derived, and that's why the Foundation has infinite money. Oh, this is a really good question. When making a map, since it has been mentioned having a full creative freedom, I've always admired the game's maps feel that they could exist in real life. How extensive is the research and how laboratory, prison, car garage are meant to look, even down to the small details like drop face masks, lab equipment, even a janitor's mop, feel like they tell a story of what happened to the civilians. So you definitely seen a bit of part of it with like the concept arts we've featured. I guess how would you say you collaborate with concept artists and people like Kyle to kind of like tell a story using environmental art? Because I know that's also the other half of your discipline here outside of lighting.
Yeah, I would say definitely Kyle Fitzpatrick handles like literally hit the nail on the head of like doing tons and tons of research on not only for our environments but also our characters. Something I really like about it, and I don't know when he'll be doing another stream again, but if you look at and when doing characters, like he likes to attach. Well, he likes to art and create a piece of concept art, but along with that artwork, he actually poses pictures of like of what the real life references next to that piece of concept art, so you can see like almost like it's the equivalent of like showing your sources at the end of like a college paper, like showing exactly where he got the idea from, so that I can take like, okay, so it is based on something that does exist in the real world. So when it comes to Area 12, I mean, I don't think there's any. I mean, as far as we know, there's really nowhere like Area 12. But kind of taking like what we know about like brutalist architecture and taking inspiration from multiple images online of like concepts of like buildings in like the 60s and the 70s, and then putting that in the game through like the art department is definitely a blast. I haven't, other than the prison, I don't, and like the garage, I haven't touched Area 12 too much, but I assume after 0.16 we'll be going back inside the facility and getting it finished and fleshing it out more with new levels and new areas to explore, and definitely new audio and all that stuff.
Braden Survives asks, does the team work with or operate with architects? As I've heard a lot of realistic sites use space and purpose for concepts and environments. That's really interesting. I don't know if the team actually collaborate. I think they just get a really good reference pool of material.
Yeah, I don't think we've actually talked to an architect. Well, I mean, okay, well, Trey Bishop isn't. I mean, Trey's built houses before, but like in terms of like like a building or like a full city architecture, I definitely know. But like I was saying earlier, like Kyle Fitzpatrick definitely does his research, even if we don't have someone directly that we can ask questions. We definitely we definitely have people internally that do the thorough research to make sure that we're doing it as accurate as possible. If not taking huge inspiration from something that would or could have existed or does exist.
As much as I would love to see, I mean, when applicable, Afray will do field research, because I know Pfeiffer is like a true man of the woods, will, just go out with his sound recorder and get natural sounds. And if you followed our social media, the Fray team, when they went out to GDC, they did go to the gun range to just like shoot guns and get like sound effects. But we're still like a small indie studio, so as awesome as it would be to have an architectural consultant, there's a limit in terms of like how much time and resources you can put into. But the fact that the levels feel good enough to have that kind of detail is a huge compliment. Remy the Protogen asks, is there going to be another reactor that we can blow up? Because as you probably know, we can't get the Steam achievement anymore.
Yeah, I just tried opening. I mean, I think we'll have to probably end the streams. I just tried opening up Axiom, but it seems like the lights aren't working.
Well, it looks really cool and dramatic here. Is Outpost Axiom kind of like a really demanding map compared to the other ones? Because I know it's like outdoors.
Wait, I didn't even realize we had a crane here. This is new to me. I'm learning. I'm learning stuff with the audience tonight. I found barrels and maps they shouldn't be. These rock formations I feel like are new. But oh yeah, Axiom. The foliage is definitely a little bit demanding. Dense foliage, I would say, because there's a lot of. If I actually pulled the wireframe here, you can just see. Holy moly, the amount of the complexity from the trees. Luckily, though, a lot of them are billboards, and you'll see off in the distance. A lot of them get loaded in. Technically, though, I'm on max settings in the editor, so we probably should push for a little bit farther away. But I think Axiom is one of our better maps, I would say. I mean, technically, as you spawn in, you can technically see the whole map in its entirety from the beginning of the game. So I imagine maybe you have to load more and see more objects and meshes. So I haven't done any profiling, so I wouldn't know for sure. And plus, it's been a while since we've actually touched the map for improvements and whatnot. Definitely a blast from the past.
Axiom's gonna get like a big bit of a a touch up eventually too, right? Isn't that kind of on the list?
I believe so.
Yes.
It's not my radar, but
I know it's
it will be updated.
Yeah,
because I know a little bit about what its purpose is, but I don't want to reveal anything. It's not a huge spoiler.
Yeah. And Gooms, and I just want to let it be known here. Gooms said he'd buy me another monitor.
Oh, right.
Yep.
If 0.16 does well, he'd buy me another monitor.
Monitors at Goodwill. I'll get you one of those.
No, but and I have the proof. It's a $600 monitor.
One of those ones that.
So I mean, I'll take them up on the offer. So if 0.16 does well, then I have that to look forward to. Other than the update doing really well.
Braden Survives asks, for Architect, I mostly was just curious if anyone on the team had architecture backgrounds. The environments are really well handcrafted, so I was just curious. Are there going to be any other environmental storytellings planned? Honestly, I think there's going to be a lot more environmental storytelling planned. Just now the narrative has been implemented with kind of like more directly in the gameplay with update 0.15 with Crow. And I hear that there was some really big narrative stuff coming in 0.116. So I think the environmental storytelling is just kicking off. So look forward to more of that. And Axo asks, is Axiom meant to be a factory or some sort of warehouse or something?
Axiom. Okay, well, originally Axiom was kind of hot, kind of jumped around in terms of what it's supposed to be. Originally, it was actually set in Sweden. It was called Hunt Sweden, and then we kind of thought about it, and it didn't make a lot of sense. Like, just Sweden kind of felt, and you'll actually see that because we still have Swedish writing. Got kan radi, whatever that means. And then we switched it back to where it's basically it's gonna get changed. That's kind of why I'm kind of divulging into it. But it's got switched over to being not Area 12 itself, but a local station near Area 12. So Area 12 is somewhere like nearby, but this is just like a listening storage location that is I believe a guise for something. Like, it's supposed to look like a storage facility, but actually it's like another entrance into Area 12. So I believe it will be getting an overhaul at some point. When, I don't know, but I guess we'll get to it when we get to it. But I'll be looking forward to working on it and kind of cleaning it up if we do end up wanting to do that.
I think it'll be, once it gets updated, it'll be really pretty and really fun to play. I have some idea of what they want to do with it, but obviously I want to be a little bit coy. But all right, so we are going on to an hour and a half. We've had a very nice little stream, got to see some really cool behind the scenes stuff, and learn more about technical lighting details. I have to go record the movie for the film night. But Venny, any final thoughts you'd like to give to these wonderful people before we wrap things up?
No, don't. I don't think I have anything else to add. Just thanks for everyone for showing up, and people really do. I know I like to yap a lot. That's pretty obvious. But if people really enjoy this kind of stuff, obviously it was a little bit more tame now because again, like I'm kind of dancing around the release of the Arctic map. So when that gets released, maybe we can kind of come back to us and kind of show the behind the scenes of that map, which will definitely be interesting. So I guess it's really just if people if people want to do it or are if there's interest in it. So I guess only time will tell. But thanks for everyone for showing up, for sure.
All right, so I'm going to do a quick rundown of the last 3 questions, and then we're wrapping it up. That's it. No more questions. I will not answer it, but I'm being polite to the people who asked. Are there any in-game areas with almost monotone style lighting that we see in the main menu with red lights?
Not so far, but there was supposed to be there was definitely supposed to be. There's definitely going to be in the future, kind of how like I was kind of talking about early in the garage section of in the future, certain maps and levels will have very distinct, very like clear cut lighting, like either just completely red or like messing around with yellow and greens and oranges, like flat out, like not like trying to go from like very desaturated to something more bold and contrasty.
All right, and last question. I'm curious to know if you guys are thinking about doing something more related to the game's melee weapons, such as stealth system, or adding more animations, or even allowing enemies to use them.
No, definitely no. No, we have the pipe, right, Gooms? We have the pipe, and we have another.
Yeah, I believe
weapon.
there will be more melee weapons. I don't know about enemies using them though.
Yeah, no. I know we have the pipe in the game, and I know we have another melee weapon that I don't think is accessible, but it's definitely in the game. And I know for a fact that we've talked about it publicly that we want to do melee weapons. It's just something again, like there's so much going on. Things have kind of gotten swept under the rug, but we definitely haven't forgotten about melee. It will be incorporated hopefully in the future.
There is a really cool stealth, but that's so behind the things I can't even talk about it. So we'll see if it makes it in the game. If it does, it's a really cool idea. So I won't say anything else beside that. But all right. So thank you so much for hanging out with us this middle of the week stream. This Saturday we will be having a very special Frozen horror movie night. I'm going to, as soon as this stream's over, I'm going to record the second movie that we will be playing for it and putting it together. So I hope I see you all on Saturday night. It'll be a wonderful night of wonderful Frozen horror entertainment, and we will be having another community event next week with John Tolan, who will be doing 3D camera design. I will be announcing the time and date for that on social as soon as I get it approved and all the details are wrinkled out. So look forward to that and have a wonderful evening. It was always a pleasure hanging out with you, the wonderful members of the Afraid community, and thank you for your love and support of SCP-5K.
Later.
And with that, I bid you adieu.
Finally.